of course, Chuck Schumer and other senior Democratic leaders were complicit in the cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline, and they colluded with legacy media to ensure that the public was in the dark about just how bad Biden's functioning was, because it was prudent for the Democratic Party at the time to keep this puppet of a president in office. They thought it was their best chance of defeating Trump until the whole lie, the whole myth was just busted wide open at the debate, like Steve said, and they couldn't cover it up anymore. It was just too glaringly obvious. I mean, truly, when the Democrats want to consolidate power, they will go to extreme lengths. But it's just incredible that he is doubling down. At this point, like, the history books will not be kind to anyone involved in the latter months of Biden.
All right, guys, what day we've had already. It's the federal government is closed today because we heard the word snow in the D.C. area. And so if you hear the word snow or someone says it or shows an image of it, the government closes down. In all seriousness, we did get a few inches in the area. Schools closed last night. The government is closed, but Congress was at work certifying the election of President Donald Trump. Now, we are officially 2 weeks away from that. He's having a big press conference tomorrow, so this is going to be fun. It was on Hugh Hewitt this morning. A lot to get to. It is going to be unbelievable. Derek Van Orden is joining us tomorrow to talk a lot about, remember, he's a former Navy SEAL. He's going to talk to us about counterterrorism, what's going on in both New Orleans, what happened down there, plus the Cybertruck explosion in Vegas, plus Seb Gorka, the incoming NSC National Security staffer, who is a friend of the show, going to be joining us as well to break down a lot of what's going on, not just there, but also in terms of Trump staffing, some little bickering going on online about the purity of some of the folks filling the national security staff for President Trump. So anyway, by the way, I always have my newsletter come out on Tuesdays and Fridays, SeanSpicer.com. It is free to sign up, although you are welcome to become a VIP member, get some insight that's nowhere else. But this week in particular, I'm going to put stuff about the transition. If you're looking for a job in the Trump-Vance administration, I can't get you a job, but I can tell you where to apply for one. Balls and all the inaugural stuff, same thing. I can't get you in, I can't get you tickets, but I can tell you where to do that. All of that at SeanSpicer.com. All right, a great panel discussion coming your way. Two amazing sponsors I want to tell you about before we get to the panel, though. One are my good friends at PhD Weight Loss. Speaking of Seb Gorka, you know the guy's a good-looking man, just to begin with, but he's even better looking now. I asked him why not too long ago. He said that he had aligned himself with the folks at My PhD Weight Loss, and he looks phenomenal. And I said, Seb, I want to look more phenomenal like you. So I'm hooked up with the folks at My PhD Weight Loss. I've tried every fad diet in the world, like literally every one of them. And the thing that was really cool is it's not a diet. It's not like just losing weight. They help you set goals, help you attain them, help you maintain them. They give you some starter food. It is the last diet or plan you'll ever need because it's actually a change in your lifestyle. And I love this. There's accountability. You meet with a nutritionist every week, so you can't hide. And that's what I love about it, because they've kept me honest. And throughout the holiday season, I maintained, and that was pretty good. And now I'm back to the getting back down. As I said, they send you some food at no extra cost. You've got these weekly weigh-ins. Schedule your one-on-one consultation. Give them a call at 1-864-644-1900. Better yet, go to myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. All right, but I told you this at Thanksgiving, and I did the same thing over the Christmas holidays. We had a lot of people gather, and what did I do every morning? I started off with a huge pot of Wired to Fish coffee. Look at this thing. I've already gone through crushed one. This is the second bag. I just wanted to show you how much of the Wired to Fish coffee. Hint to the guys at Wired to Fish, I need a little more. This stuff is so good. Everybody kept asking, what coffee is this? And I was like, Wired to Fish coffee, my friends. This is awesome because not only is it great coffee, and it's Arabica beans from Guatemala and Mexico, but it's also a company that I believe in. They give back a big chunk of their profits to faith-based initiatives and clean water initiatives. These are companies that I can get behind. I love that. I don't feel like I'm going to Starbucks and supporting the woke agenda. I can make a pot of Wired to Fish coffee, feel good about it, know that it tastes great. I'm telling you guys, this is the way that we can live life now, not just voting in November, but voting with our wallets every day. And I feel really good about the folks and the products that Wired to Fish coffee. So go to Wired, the numeral 2, fishcoffee.com, Wired2fishcoffee.com. Use code WeCare for 15% off. All right, guys, a lot to break down. As I said, tomorrow we're going to really break down what happened in Vegas, what happened in in New Orleans and talk about a lot of the theories that are going on, because I know you've seen a lot of them. The Sean Ryan podcast has brought up a lot of issues. I'll get to that with Seb Gorka, Derek Van Orden tomorrow, a lot to break down. So without further ado, I want to bring in our all-star panel today. Bradley Devon, the politics editor over there at the Daily Signal, Caroline Downey, staff writer at the National Review, and our good friend, longtime former colleague, Steve Cortez, the founder of the League of American Workers, Trump campaign advisor in 2016, 2020, and always online advising and giving good stuff. Guys, good to see you all. I want to kick it off. Trump was on Hugh Hewitt this morning. And Hugh tweeted out something that I thought was fascinating, because I want to get to what Trump said about immigration in just a second. But after the interview, Hugh Hewitt put out a tweet and he said, President-elect Trump is the best interview on the planet because he always tells the interview exactly what's on his mind. Legacy media reacts to our focus on his comments to me on the Dreamers, which we're going to get to in a second. But the most important part of the conversation was President-elect's focus on shipbuilding. He knows our Navy needs resources, starting with ships and subs. And Caroline, I thought what was fascinating is that issue doesn't get a ton of attention. But to me, it showed where President Trump's head is, that we have a threat from China and we are not ready to face it. Our military, our Navy is not where it needs to be. And yet President Trump immediately went to how we combat this, talking about rebuilding our Navy, getting us above 300 ships, which we're sorely below. And I thought that was a very telling statement. I thought Hugh was so right in calling that out as the big takeaway.
Absolutely. And I think Trump recognizes that we need to signal naval prowess in the South China Sea, as you mentioned, as we enter this new era of geopolitics where China very much is an adversary and we're trying to just be deterrent. You know, deterrent is important. And naval ships, I actually have my family has a small cabin in a more rural part of Maine, right along the coast, where there's a massive shipbuilding plant. And I've seen firsthand these destroyers. And, you know, the production, I think, is still pretty high, but safe to say that our military armaments and equipment, as well as just vessels, I think have been depleted. And I think generally it's understood that we're kind of lagging in terms of like competitive, ships. And so hopefully with China, with Trump now at the helm, we will be competitive once more.
Bradley, the thing that I thought was fascinating about what Hugh was saying is that the media never focuses on they always focus on the shiny nickel. But we've lost the defense industrial base of shipbuilding. We talked over the last couple of weeks about the fact that we don't have the munitions we need anymore. We've given it all to Ukraine and we can't build it back enough. We're having this huge debate about Nippon Steel. Like the stuff that made us great, the manufacturing, we've sort of let wither on the vine. And Trump is basically signaling now we need to get these bases back of industrial might.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And Trump has always been the wonderful, least eloquent advocate for common sense sometimes. And I said least eloquent because sometimes he just hits you over the head with it, whether it's the media or whether it's his own base or whether it's the rest of the Republican Party who wants to focus on, high-tech fighters or new drone technology. He just comes in and says, immigration, we want to stop it. Let's build a wall. And everyone says, what? A wall? That's not going to work.
Right.
Well, walls have worked for thousands of years.
You can't do it because it's never been done before, but yet here we are.
Because it's never been done, yes. And the same thing can be applied to the military, right? Navy ships. We need more Navy ships. You want to make sure that the United States is in a place to protect its interests at home and abroad. You're going to need the hard power to do so. And that's why Trump is so right on this issue. I will say the one thing that I might have a degree of separation with the president is we don't know how conventional naval power is actually going to work in the South China Sea. When we've wargamed that scenario where, let's say, China makes a move on Taiwan and we decide that we're going to commit more assets to the region, more naval assets to the region in the South China Sea, well, it doesn't necessarily bode well for our conventional Navy that's still operating off of, late World War II, post-World War II naval paradigms. I think what Trump wants to do with shaking up the bureaucracy is pair that reinvestment in not only our military, but in the American industrial base with a reorientation of the priorities of the United States military and the strategies of the United States military. Colin Powell, when he started out, shockingly enough, wanted to bring this about, and he was kind of swallowed by the Bush administration and some of the lies peddled there. And ultimately ended up in the wars on terror, etc. I think Trump now, he's fired a bunch of neocons in the past 7 years that he's been in the public square. He's putting together a foreign policy team that has all these different elements of the right-wing coalition that got him elected. And I think he's actually going to be able to reorient American foreign policy effectively if he gets his nominees through.
You know, Steve Cortez, Hugh was right that a lot of the focus was on the Dreamer. So let's talk about that. I am concerned about some of the comments that are made about cutting deals, right? I believe that Republicans control the process right now. We've got the presidency, the 2 houses of Congress. If we're going to solve immigration, then let's do it now. Let's have a strong border security bill. Let's do things that make sense. But I think that I am concerned that too many Republicans want to cut a deal, so to speak, with Democrats. So what do you think the deal has to be with, when President Trump says we need to deal with the Dreamers, what do you think we need to do and how?
Sure. Sean, when it comes to politics, I always think that we can learn quite a lot from The Godfather, from the movie. And remember the scene where Frankie Pentangeli says, let's hit him now while we still got the muscle?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we got the muscle right now. Okay. So there is no reason for us to be making moderate compromises when it comes to immigration. And by the way, that's not just because of what we want to do. It's what the American people want, because President Trump could not have been more explicit and more adamant during his campaign that he intended to secure the border and mass deportations. And with those issues front and center, he swept every single swing state and won the popular vote. That does not mean that we're now supposed to get soft and milquetoast in Washington, D.C. Regarding the Dreamers specifically, and by the way, I don't like to use that phrase, even though I just did, because of course, American citizens have dreams as well. But regarding these DACA adults, okay, and they're adults, they're not children. Regarding these DACA adults who were brought here as children, I will concede that they are a different category of illegal migrants because they themselves did not make the adult choice to trespass into our country. And so I do think they should be dealt with differently. But should they be offered citizenship? Absolutely not. No. If we give them citizenship, we are incentivizing more of this kind of trafficking of children illegally across our border.
Let me throw my idea at you, Steve, because I agree with you 100%. These people, it's one thing if you break the law and you want to be rewarded, no bueno, right? Here's what I think. What if we cut a deal right now to say, okay, you came into this country because somebody else brought you in. You're living in the shadows. You can't be as productive and open, right? So here's the deal. We'll let you stay. You get a permanent green card, but you cannot get citizenship. Yeah. If you don't want to leave, which you can stay, but you agree, you make some kind of, signed agreement that you get to stay in the country, have a green card, come out of the shadows, but you're trading that for saying, but I'm not going to be a citizen. I think we should cut that deal now so that they don't have to, the Democrats say, hey, this is the best deal they're going to get. They become open but is that, all right, so let me just bounce it off you. What do you think?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, I think this is the only category, though, where we should be that generous, right? In other words, every other illegal migrant in the United States needs to be deported. That needs to happen. But for this category of DACA adults, people who did not choose to come here as adults, who were brought here as children, I think offering them legal status, but not citizenship makes a lot of sense. If we give them a path to citizenship, unfortunately, what we will then do is incentivize much more of this kind of activity where we effectively turn children into almost an admission token into the United States for traffickers, for illegal migrants, and that has to stop. So we need to have mass deportations. This is no time for Republicans in the Congress, and a lot of them want to go soft. Again, remember the words of Frankie Pentangeli, let's hit him now while we still got the muscle. And right now, we have the muscle.
I agree. Caroline, over the break, there was this feud, if you want to call it, again, maybe that's not the right word, about H-1B visas. Elon Musk gets out there and says we need H-1B visas. These are these high-tech skilled visas for people to come into the country and work for tech companies, basically. And then you had Steve Bannon and others say, no way. This is this is indentured servitude. These people come over, they get stuck working at a company. If they leave or say anything, they get deported. This is no way to live. Plus, we're selling out American workers. I put this poll out on Twitter. Okay, I do this from time to time. I've never seen a response like this in my life. Over 92,000 people voted in 48 hours, 67-33 saying no H-1B visas. I was shocked about the intensity and the comments. I think this is going to be a really interesting issue because I didn't see this thing coming.
Sean, it is one of the worst cliches in Republican politics that illegal immigration is bad, but legal immigration is by default inherently good. It's just not true. And I know that we have this new Republican coalition that includes the tech moguls in Silicon Valley, the Elon Musks and the David Sacks, and we have to respect that they were part of Trump's victory group. But there's also the traditional GOP Trumper base that very much feels like globalization and like outsourcing and all of those things is what kind of disarmed them as American citizens. And that's why Trump's populism gained steam in the beginning, even before 2016. And look, libertarians will say, well, they think we're an economic zone, even though we are a country with customs and traditions and a collective credo, a common language. There are so many things that America is that's beyond just a GDP generation area. And they'll say, oh, we're missing out on millions and millions of dollars of consumer benefits and GDP if we don't import and recruit these highly skilled employees from China and India. Well, actually, we have a surplus of highly skilled STEM graduates in this country as it is. In 2022, we had 17 million Americans graduate with STEM degrees. We only have about 8 million filled. So what does that tell you? We don't have a STEM shortage like the advocates of H-1B expansion will tell you. We have plenty at our disposal. They're just in this like dormant state and they've chosen other career paths and we have to reactivate and re-engage them. And I think the reason why they never pursued STEM is because wages in STEM have stagnated, Sean. And basic supply and demand will tell you the reason for that is because there's too much supply, and that's artificially coming from abroad. H-1B recipients flooded the market, and they basically drove wages not down, but they're really not increasing at the level they should be if the H-1B program or if STEM workers were in such high demand. It's just not true.
Bradley, do you guys at the Daily Signal, when I honestly was taken back by the intensity of the no H-1B visas, the Steve Bannon position on this. I thought it would get mixed up, but 67-33, that was shocking to me. I did not see that flip-flopped, that level of disparity in the thought there.
I'm so glad that we're talking about this issue, Sean, because on the day of the election, when we were running through our election coverage, I said, listen, this coalition, if we win today, is going to be in control for at least the next 2 years, and there are tons of fault lines that they could step on. Let's say the coalition at the top, the elite level of the coalition, is made up of, you can say, Christian intellectuals, whether they're Catholic or Protestant, right? You think of like the Christian Nationalism Project or other Catholic thinkers who say essentially that we have this comprehensive view of the human person that isn't being held up in the United States of America, and therefore the American dream is becoming less accessible to the American people and to each individual American family. When those avenues are closed off, it's government's responsibility to reopen them, especially if government was the one who closed them in the first place. Then the other side of the coalition are the tech bros. Elon Musk wants to put chips in people's brains. Don't take my word for it. He said it himself. This is not a group that has the same view of the human person as, say, like that traditional Christian tradition that we see on the right. And so this was the most clear booby trap for this coalition to walk into early. H-1B visas. Because so many people are coming from the tech world, H-1B visas are a way to get cheap foreign labor, just as Caroline was talking about. And oftentimes, they're not actually fulfilling the role of chief engineer, chief software engineer. They're more lower level than you would think. They're not actually skilled laborers in many ways. So the other interesting dynamic here is whenever you push someone like a Vivek or someone like a Elon on this question, they retreat to, well, don't you think we should be taking all the world's geniuses and bringing them to the greatest country of all time, and then we can, outcompete China or reinvigorate the American domestic manufacturing industries, and therefore, cause this rising tide will raise all boats. Listen, if we want to say that H-1B visas are for the uber gifted, right? People with like 130 plus IQ, that's less than 2% of the world's population. That's less than half of the total population of the United States in the entire world. And so a lot of these people, because they are so intelligent and because they are well educated, they are already comfortable and wealthy in their own countries, not to mention whether or not they share our values. And so if you wanted to square the circle between the H-1B visa folks on the tech side and the Trump base that says no, unfettered immigration, whether it was low skill or high skill, is what led to the current economic conditions of the country. Well, realistically, you should have H-1B visas sitting at about 1,000 super geniuses per year. But that's never what these tech folks say. They always say they want to bring in more skilled labor, and that ultimately helps their corporations' bottom lines. And so I think if you wanted to negotiate a deal here, you're going to actually increased threshold for what counts as skilled labor in the modern economy, while radically reducing the number of H-1Bs that we hand out per year. That way, the tech people can, as they say, get their super geniuses, while the American people's interests are protected in the working, middle, and upper middle class.
Bradley, I just wanted to add, we already have a visa for individuals with extraordinary ability. It's called the O1 visa. We already have, and there's another category on top of that. So we don't even need H-1B. H-1B has always been kind of a facade to really get cheap laborers imported into this country to help these companies' bottom line, as Bradley just said.
No, that's exactly correct. And Bradley, I'm also glad, though, that you talked about making sure that legal immigrants to the United States share our values. That's critical, too. It's not just how skilled or how smart they are. For example, now this is an extreme example, but I think it's relevant. The 9/11 hijackers came to the United States legally, and Mohammed Atta, their leader, had a graduate degree in STEM from Europe. So he was highly skilled and also highly hateful and caused unbelievable damage, clearly, to this country. Now, again, that's an extreme example. But the point here is we want people coming to this country who both bring a skill set but also love our values. Because, to Caroline's point earlier, we're not just an economic machine. We're not a company. We are a country, and in many ways, a country should operate like a family. And if you don't buy into the values of the family, then you have no business coming here. We shouldn't be inviting you. I think, by the way, the best way to try to reach a compromise, look, if it were up to me, if I were the monarch, I would just say no worker visas, period. As a matter of fact, I think we need a legal immigration moratorium. I think we need to take a complete pause. I don't think that's practical, though, right now, given the politics of Washington. So I think the best compromise, where we can tell the tech crowd and the pro-business crowd that you can still get your geniuses, and I wrote an article about this at Real Clear Politics, is to establish a minimum salary that is very high. My minimum salary would be at least $250,000 per year. The reason I chose that number is that's a little more than 3 times the median household income in America, which is $80,000 according to the Census Bureau. In addition to that, a $50,000 fee, effectively a fine, or if you will, a tariff on human capital that would be paid to the government. So if a company wants to pay $50,000 to the government, $250,000 to the worker who's going to come over, then we will at least ensure, okay, they're bringing over a surgeon who has unique talents and talents that perhaps we can't find in our region of the United States. Then we will know that we're bringing in the actual superstars that are talked about in promoting H-1B. But let's make that a reality by establishing a really, really high minimum. To me, that would be a sensible compromise place. And by the way, Elon Musk himself stated as such. Now, he didn't name an amount, but in one of his many posts on this issue, he said, we want the 0.1% and we should have a high minimum salary. Well, let's take him at his word and let's do that.
Can I add one more thing here,
Yeah.
Sean? So Steve is exactly right on this. If you set an excise wage through government policy for these people coming in, right, they're not undercutting the wages of workers here in the United States. So increasing the cost for corporations to bring in high-skilled labor and then cultivate them is actually makes them think about what does this employee look like for us 5, 10, 15 years down the road. The other thing, he cited the extreme example of Atta in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. This is something that we don't talk about at all, that actually elite migrants are more resistant to assimilation than working class migrants. Let's think of the history of the United States here. A lot of folks that were coming from Europe over the course of the 19th and 20th century were working class individuals that were, in order to provide for their families, constantly thrown into the American body politic and had to assimilate. If you come here with resources, and if you come here from a completely different culture, you can insulate yourself in a way that immigrants previously could not. They are more resistant to assimilation, and therefore it's not going to ultimately benefit, the development of those values. Even if they do believe in meritocracy, they could believe in a very different type of meritocracy. And so even if they can't inculcate the values before they come over, it's much more likely a working class migrant takes on the values of an American citizen than an elite migrant.
Yeah. All right. I want to continue this. Before I do that, we're blessed to have two amazing sponsors continue to stay with the show. I'll tell you, I gathered with a ton of folks over Christmas, over New Year's. One of the reasons that I felt so safe, if you will, is because in my house, obviously, like a lot of you, I've got a fire extinguisher, but I always have one of these. This is a life vac. And I'm telling you, if you've ever watched somebody choke or a video or thought to myself, am I prepared? Life vac is exactly what you need next to your fire extinguisher. It's the kind of thing that saves a life. It's proven over and over again, and it can turn anyone into a hero in the event of a choking incident. It's being used by police and first responders across the country. Cruise ships, restaurants, all sorts of places have them now. And like I said, I've got one. Like I have a first aid kit, a fire extinguisher. I hope I never have to use it, but I'm happy I do. It's so easy to use. Anybody can do this and be a hero, save a life. You want to have one of these, go to lifevac.net right now, lifevac.net right now. You can get one. If you ever have to use it, they actually will replace for free the part that goes over the person's mouth. And if your children's school doesn't have one, they'll send one for free. Don't wait another minute. Your life may depend on it. Someone else's life may depend on it. Go to lifevac.net right now. All right, guys, one last thing. If you are the person in your company that is responsible for the finances, maybe you're the CEO, maybe you just run the finances, you need to get one of these. This is a ramp card. It says Visa on the front. You notice there's no numbers there, right? Because you can't use this one. They're not dummies. I'm not putting this thing up there so you can charge. But if you oversee 5,000 people, you need to get one of these ramp cards because it is the expense management system that will save you time and money. Trust me, it's a game saver. We are signing up here. Everyone on the show gets one. They issue virtual cards and the hard cards. So if they're out, in a restaurant or at a supply store, they can buy what they need. You set limits. You can set the places that they go. It collects the receipts. It categorizes expenses in real time. It saves you so much time and money. You're not running around trying to get a bunch of receipts out of somebody's pocket and scanned in. It's easy to use. And to get started, they set all this up within like 15 minutes. No matter the size of your company. And right now you get $250. What a way to make up some of the money that you just spent over the thing. When you go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer, trust me, you will save time. You put a little money into your own pocket. You get to be a genius about this. Plus you get to do this. Remember, cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank, members FDIC, terms and conditions apply. Again, go to ramp.com. Steve Cortez, I want to go around the horn real quick because Bradley said tech bros, and I just want to, since it's the beginning of the year, I want to do just a quick round robin. Do you think by the end of the year that there is a fissure within MAGA world among tech bros, Elon, Vivek, others, and the MAGA base?
I'll give you sort of a split answer here, and I'm not trying to be cute, but this is what I really believe. I don't think there will be a broad split. I don't. In other words, I think that this coalition will remain intact despite some significant differences on issues like immigration. However, when it comes to the individual personalities, I do believe at some point Elon Musk and President Trump probably do have a rather significant falling out. I think it's going to be difficult for the two of them to maintain a close relationship over time. I'd love to be wrong about that, but that's my projection.
All right. Anybody else different? Because I agree with Steve on this. Bradley or Caroline, I just think at the end of 2025, we're not hanging out at Mar-a-Lago together. Not me, but him.
Steve is exactly right on the Elon point. That is
Yeah.
the one that scares me the most, because Elon Musk, he is the honey badger. He don't give a bleep. And if that goes sour, it's going to go sour in a bad way. I will say the reason that this coalition not only won, but can coexist despite its differences is because Trump's populist appeal is twofold. One is economic, and that's where we face some of those differences on immigration, right? It was your sons and daughters have been sent to war while your jobs have been shipped overseas, and you've been screwed. Let me come back in there and fix it. The other side is actually a resurgence of civil liberties populism, which is why you see the focus on free speech, particularly in the digital public square. You see the resurgence of patriotism. You see the anti-iconoclastic tendencies, kind of forming together, right? Trump's like, I'm going to build every statue that they've torn down. I'm going to rebuild them. And congratulations, left. The statue of Robert E. Lee just got 10 feet taller. And so that's kind of what holds it together. And I think Trump, if he gets worried about the tech bro flank, he can retreat to a place of restoring civil liberty, of civil liberty populism, the type of which we've seen, of course, many presidents in the past retreat to when they're trying to hold a governing coalition together, whether that was Bill Clinton in the 1990s or Abraham Lincoln in the 1860s.
All right, I want to shift to politics for a second. Caroline, there's something that I don't understand going on in the left. James Carville wrote this op-ed, and he says Kamala lost because of the economy. And I feel like James Carville, who coined that phrase, "It's the economy stupid," needs to get a new one, which is "It's the candidate stupid," right? That I don't understand all these stories that come out, and nobody will say she sucked. She was a horrible candidate. I don't understand. I mean, to me, Washington D.C. is so good at blaming people, and yet she wasn't good. Biden showing that he can't handle going out the door, but yet no one will say it. I don't get it. What is the problem on the left? Why can't they? I mean, to me, that's the cop-out answer. I actually think if our policies are great, she just sucked. Why can't they just say she was a bad candidate?
Sean, I think to admit that Kamala Harris was a bad candidate would mean that they would have to confess up to Nancy Pelosi's grand orchestrated plan not working, the ouster that she engineered did not work, and also that the DEI candidate idea didn't work. I mean, Kamala Harris was a woman of color. She was a woman. This was supposed to be a golden combination that would give her a fast track to the White House, and obviously that's no replacement for competency and for articulation of the ideas and the priorities of the American people. So yeah, it's a serious blind spot that they can't see just how insufferable she was to most Americans, including independents. But on the economy, that is, I think, at the end of the day, it was the most fatal part of their platform, because there was such a degree of gaslighting behind it. I mean, you would just see the Fed data come out, and clearly inflation is tempering, but it's still there. So even though the rate of inflation had slowed throughout the end of Biden's term, and they would insist in statements to the public that, I mean, don't you feel better now that inflation is lowering? It's like people don't care about macroeconomic indices. They care about the sentiment on the ground. What do they feel when they go to the grocery store or the gas pump? They feel malaise. They feel hamstrung. They feel suffocated. They feel like they can't afford their children's future. They can't afford today. They're mortgaging the future to afford today. And so at the end of the day, all of this kind of, abstraction talk with the economic, defenders, like, there were so many of them. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because people were truly unhappy, and they were hurting. So, and that was most damning for them at the end of the day.
Steve Cortez, it wasn't just Kamala Harris. The left still doesn't admit what's going on with Joe Biden. Yesterday, Joe Biden was on Meet the Press. Now, I rarely get my mind blown, but I think Kristen Welker lost a bet because she asked Chuck Schumer a question. And I think it was like literally, because I had to rewind it. I'm like, I think I might have heard that wrong. There's no way they're holding Democrats accountable. I want to play you this. It's a minute long, but I want to play you the whole thing because I don't know that we'll ever hear this again on a Sunday show where they'll hold them accountable. Let me play you what Kristen Welker said to Chuck Schumer about Joe Biden and then have you respond to it. I'm going to play you the full minute. Let's go.
I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
No. Look, we didn't. And let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
Do you feel, as we have this conversation today, that President Biden could serve another 4 years had he stayed in the race and potentially won?
Well, I'm not going to speculate. As I said, I think his record is a stellar one and he'll go down.
All right. Steve Cortez, have at it.
Look, every word uttered by Schumer there was a lie. Yep. Literally every single word. Number one, everyone knew that Biden was incapacitated a long time ago. And when I say everyone, I don't mean just insiders. I mean regular citizens. If you regularly consume political media, regular people of any kind of common sense knew that we had an incapacitated president. And we still do, by the way, for 2 more weeks, which should worry all of us into this home stretch. But also the biggest lie of all that Schumer told there is that he made this decision himself. All right, that is complete malarkey. No, he was forced out in an internal palace coup. He was forced out. And so there's 2 huge lies here, by the way, that are conjoined. The first lie was that Biden was fine. Once that lie was exposed by Biden on live TV at the debate, they had to scramble and do something. And then the second big lie is that Kamala Harris, who had to be the substitute candidate, she simply had to be. Why? Because she's the vice president and she's black and a woman. And that combination of forces for the left, for the Democratic Party, meant that she must be the replacement candidate. But the second grand lie was that she earned that spot, was that she should have been the vice president of the United States. No, she was selected purely for reasons of immutable characteristics. In other words, only because of her DEI credit score was she the vice president of the United States. So to some degree, by the way, it's beautiful, and it should be satisfying to some degree to those of us on the political right that these twin lies came back and completely trapped the Democratic Party to the point where they couldn't win. I think they would have lost, of course, with either candidate. The reality, of how well President Trump did and how much the American people yearned for a return to the prosperity and security of the Trump era. But nonetheless, it is somewhat delicious that they got trapped by their own lies.
Caroline, the thing that I think was interesting, it's the first question she asks him is, did you mislead us? And he doesn't answer the question. He says, look at his legislative record. Look at the number of judges. That's not what we're talking about, right? That was a sleight of hand. Look at the shiny nickel. Look at the number of judges he's appointed. What does that have to do with his mental acuity? And then when she asks him as a follow-up, would he have served better for the next 4 years? Well, if you think he's still sharp as a tack, that's an easy question. But he says, I'm not going to speculate on that. What's so hard? If you stand by your initial statement, which you think he's sharp as a tack and he did all these great things, then that's an easy one. He refuses, he obfuscates on the first one, and then he ignores the second. That, I think, it was amazing to me how little attention those 2 answers got.
Of course, Chuck Schumer and other senior Democratic leaders were complicit in the cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline, and they colluded with legacy media to ensure that the public was in the dark about just how bad Biden's functioning was, because it was prudent for the Democratic Party at the time to keep this puppet of a president in office. They thought it was their best chance of defeating Trump until the whole lie, the whole myth was just busted wide open at the debate, like Steve said, and they couldn't cover it up anymore. It was just too glaringly obvious. And anyone with eyes could see. It was just plainly, an observation that this man was an empty vessel. And but that's not to say that, there wasn't this serious kind of psychological operation that Chuck Schumer was very intimately involved in to pull the wool over the American people's eyes and push through this guy that, couldn't even stay awake in meetings with international leaders. And it just shows you how, truly, when the Democrats want to consolidate power, they will go to extreme lengths. They will do anything. They will do anything. And the GOP tends to be a little bit more ethical on when it comes to stuff like that. We try to have more integrity, but it's just incredible that he is doubling down, even though, at this point, like, the history books will not be kind to anyone involved in the latter months of Biden.
Bradley, last night, Biden is at the White House, and he yelled at, in respect to the comment that Chuck Schumer said about his next 4 years, I want to just give people a preview of what he said last night to some of the reporters gathered there at the White House for an event that he was holding. Let's take a look.
By being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
This is he is bitter, man. What is up with the lecture? I know more people than you guys do. What is this? Like, I'm wondering if he's just pissed that no one's writing great things about him anymore.
Sean, I've said it before on your show. I'll say it again. Post-coup Biden. I love this guy. This guy is a psychopath. It's fantastic to watch in real time. He makes for great TV whenever he steps up to the microphone. I wish we had more of this President Joe Biden before the palace coup. Going back to Schumer's comments, so what this all really tells me is that Congress is a nursing home too, and nobody is actually sharp in the Senate. Mitch McConnell's freezing, Nancy Pelosi's falling down, Kay Granger's in a nursing home, one of the top appropriators in Congress, and Chuck Schumer can't figure out that the president of the United States mentally isn't there. So I guess they're all kicking the bucket as well. But real talk here. Of course, Senator Schumer knew exactly what was going on. Of course, Senator Schumer was behind it. And this is why the only reason kind of we know all the dirty details is because Joe Biden and his loyalists are leaking them. Joe Biden and his loyalists are realizing that they are going into retirement and they can take a bucket full of BS and hand it to the Democratic Party and say, here, have fun with that for the next 4 years. Have fun with that in 2026. Have fun with that in 2028. It's awesome. I love this version of Joe Biden because Joe Biden is very bitter about this whole thing. And you know what? He should be, because he would have done better, not maybe in terms of the popular vote, but he would have done better in the places that mattered for the 2024 presidential election than Kamala Harris did. I think Donald Trump wins either way, but if you're approaching a union worker in Michigan or Wisconsin and you're asking them, hey, what's Kamala Harris's bona fides and looking out for your interests? They see a hyper-progressive California liberal. Whereas for Joe Biden, there's a reasonable argument that can be made if you're on the left to say, hey, union worker, President Joe Biden is going to be looking out for your interests. So love Joe Biden. I think we should just he should have a podcast. It can be called Malarkey or something like that. 95% of it is just going to be him mumbling.
Do a podcast? This guy he can't get up for the day. Steve Cortez.
No, it's an hour. It's an hour, and he just needs to make 2 cogent sentences.
He can't do an hour show all year. It's a 1 year he couldn't get an hour of content in. Steve Cortez, today, obviously, President Trump got certified, but we wouldn't have certified him had we not had a speaker. Johnson went through several, machinations to get it on that first ballot. But I always love the concession speech that the runner-up, in this case, Hakeem Jeffries, gives. I thought he went on way too long. It's like, dude, hand over the gavel and say whatever. But he couldn't help himself. He talked about election denialism.
Right.
I want to play you the clip and then just show you a quick tweet on this.
Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You see?
Okay. That's just not true. Not only are there several election deniers on his side of the aisle, he's one of them. Look at this tweet right here. The more we learn about the 2016 election, the more illegitimate it becomes. America knows to know whether we have a fake president in the Oval Office. I don't know why we let them get away with this. I mean, it's not just Hakeem Jeffries. There's a ton of them that have objected, that have said Trump was fake, that Russia interfered. I mean, Hillary Clinton, on and on and on. To me, this is like, how do they get away with this?
Right. Well, we can't let them. I mean, to your point, and you're exactly right. Hillary Clinton, is the OG of election deniers, right? I mean, the actual loser, the certifiable loser of the 2016 election, has never accepted that she legitimately lost, even though the Mueller report, after tens of millions of dollars, after endless media hand-wringing, the Mueller report determined that not only did the Trump campaign not collude, but no Americans at all colluded with the Russians. None regarding the 2016 election. So we can't let them get away with it. We have to call them out when they spew this kind of ridiculous nonsense. It is proper, and in fact, I would argue a very American tradition to be skeptical about election outcomes from either side. Yeah. But this idea that there's election denialism that exists only on the right is simply an absurdity. And by the way, on this day, let me also say, do many of us still have serious qualms about the conduct of the 2020 election? Absolutely, we do. Now, do I think it's profitable for us in a political sense to be pushing that theme still? Probably not. No, in 2025, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. However, I also will never shirk away from the reality, as I see it, that 2020 was, in fact, deeply flawed. Thankfully, we had, I think, a very clean election at the end of 2024, and we're going to have a President Trump, and I hope after that a President Vance, and do a lot to save this republic of ours.
Yeah, and I hope that we remember the lessons and we don't take our foot off the pedal, so that we keep making reforms in the right direction. Guys, thank you all for being with us. An amazing panel discussion today. As I mentioned, Congressman and former Navy SEAL Derek Van Orden. Tomorrow with Seb Gorka, we're going to get a lot of insight into China, TikTok, the attacks in New Orleans and in Vegas. So much to break down with them, so don't miss an episode. Hit that that subscribe and notification button. As I mentioned, a lot of great stuff at SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for the newsletter there. We appreciate you kicking off your week with us. Hopefully the snow ends here in the D.C. area. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Thanks for being with us.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.